Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, parents. It is lovely to see you. I was just telling Sana that I can't believe your kids are about to start applying to college. I met a lot of them in 8th grade when they were doing course registration, and even the students who aren't my students that I work with, I've seen them through sports and through trips and things with the 9th grade class and the 10th grade class, and I can't believe they're applying to colleges here very shortly. I'm sure that time has flown by for you as well. It's really good to see you guys, and hopefully this will be a very informative presentation. But as always, when we're going to say this multiple times, please reach out to us anytime you have questions. If you want to have conversations, there'll be lots of them this year, but we're always here to help you.
Good morning. No. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay. Today we're going to talk about many things in these 5 topics. We're going to talk about all of the many things that are coming towards your children in the future and whose responsibility it is to help assist them with that. We're going to talk about finding a good match, defining what that is, and showing you many resources to help you find that good match. One of those pieces is trusted sources, and we're going to talk about where we're getting our information so that you can make your best informed decisions. And overall, our message is how to support your amazing children. How do we help them through this process and this big change that's coming in their life? And then we're going to end with a little bit of a look forward into what's coming next, what we're looking forward to between now and when we return to school with your 12th graders.
One thing I want to add, because you were about, no, the next slide's fine, because you're about to come up to some slides that have a ton of information, and certainly you can take photos, but just as a reminder, we're recording this presentation, and so both the recording and the slides will be available. We'll make sure we send that out to all parents, including yourselves, afterwards, so just so you're aware.
Because we recognize this slide has too many words on it. We know that, and we're really sorry. But we want to give you a good visual of, before we start looking forward and what's coming next with the rest of 11th grade and 12th grade, we want to take a minute to look backwards and look at all of the things that your children have done already to help support and prepare them for this college process. So for us, really, it does begin in 9th and 10th grade when we start having those conversations with your children about their courses, about their extracurricular activities, finding things they enjoy and how to do more of those in a way with fidelity, how to maintain good balance so they feel successful and they feel happy, and how to navigate the stress and the changes that come at them. Those are all really important life skills, and we do begin talking with kids about those things in 9th and 10th grade. As we are entering 11th grade and the time to apply to college is getting closer, we do shift our focus a little bit more to some of the tangible or very concrete skills and activities that your kids will need in order to do this research and complete their applications well. We do a lot of very hands-on lessons with them, for example, completing their common applications. We do that over several lessons together, and we do it all together so that we can best support them in making sure that their applications are the best representation of all of the work that they have been doing so far in high school.
I think one of the things that we were hoping when we were thinking about starting with these couple of slides is to try to pull back from this idea of like, oh, it's 11th grade, this is the most important grade, this is when they do everything for college, and really celebrating that this has been a journey that they've been on, and they've been incredibly successful, and they've been working hard and stumbling along the way, and there's still going to be more ups and downs, but that it's part of this entire process, and that there's not one particular moment where it's like, oh, now is the important part. Then their growth, their progress, who they're becoming as young adults is part of this entire journey. And this year doesn't need to be any more stressful than any other year. This is just the next step and the next thing that they are doing. And they're going to be well supported as they have been their entire time here.
So as we start to shift our focus a little bit more into the tangibles, what things need to be done and how do we manage that, we have this little chart that will help show whose responsibility which jobs are. So starting with school, we are going to continue what we've been doing for the last few years with your children in sharing information and educating them about their options and how to best achieve those options, sharing information in an unbiased and factual way. Again, we aren't here to make any decisions for you or your family. We're here to give you information so you can make the best decisions for your family. We also are responsible for monitoring the overall process and making sure that your children are moving forward in line with the deadlines and the activities that they're choosing. As parents, we are really hoping for you and your family to, I'm going to go start at the bottom and move up. I think this one is more important. Helping your students, your children, identify the things they do well, and then encouraging them to do that more if that's something they enjoy. And when we're identifying things our kids do well, it also might help us notice some things where they could use a little bit more support. So if you're noticing your children need more support in certain areas, to give them that support, give them some opportunities to learn those things or practice those skills. We are also looking for parents to help gather information. There's so much information out there in the world in regards to options your children have after high school. They could do anything. And in order to help them make some good choices, gathering some information it can be really helpful. And providing that information and sharing that information in a really helpful, useful way. Also looking at different ways to do some hands-on exploration of college campuses, if that's an option, of any school breaks that you have coming up, or attending some virtual sessions online, or I know I've seen a lot of your faces at some of the sessions that we've had here on campus. You attending the parent sessions or learning about it when we share the information afterwards, and having those conversations with your children is really important. It helps them know that you're supporting them and learning along with them. And then there is the financial discussion. We should change the order of that.
I agree.
Yeah. There is a financial piece of college application because college is quite a significant cost. And one of the things that your children need to know is where they can apply based on the finances. So having some open conversations with them about what's feasible and what's not is really a helpful factor for them.
I want to go back to, Jennifer was right. We should have started with helping your students to identify their strengths, but I also think that's a good mindset as we're going into this process where it starts to become really easy to look around, and especially for our kids to compare themselves and look at all the great things somebody else is doing. And it's really easy if they're not feeling confident about the things that they are good at and the things that are their strengths and the things that they can celebrate, which is something that you can help them with, right? By modeling that for them, by talking about the great things that they've done, they can hopefully feel confident in their own personal strengths, because that will lead to a more authentic, genuine application, as opposed to trying to create an application that looks like their friends and trying to talk in the language that maybe is their friend's strengths or their peer strengths or their older sibling's strengths or somebody that they heard that got into X school's strengths. And that, again, gets away from their own amazing qualities, which, we all want to make sure we're highlighting because they do have them. They are their own kind of individual people, and that's the best way that we can support them.
As well as just creating an environment which is much more positive and supportive. I think through this process, kids do compare themselves and they feel sometimes like they should be doing something else or they could be doing something more, but it's really important for their success to feel like they're doing a good job right now with whatever it is that they're doing. So encouraging them and showing that and using those words to support them is really, really important at this stage. Yeah. Did you want to say something else? And then for your students, they kind of have this more like tasky stuff to do. I like the things that we as the school and you as the parent have to do, some more general education and learning and supporting, and that feels really nice. But when we talk to the kids at this point, it is a little bit more on task. Things like coming to the university visits that the school hosts, or doing more research about the schools to figure out which ones are a good match for them. Making sure they're reviewing their transcript every semester to make sure that it is correct. Taking the appropriate tests, responding to emails, and focusing on getting to know the teachers and the context of the class and sharing their excitement with them. That's just a small handful of the things that they're responsible for.
Later on in the presentation, we're going to talk a little bit about where to get great information and the best information. And those university visits where the colleges are coming to our school is the number one place to get that information, because they are from the universities. They have the most up-to-date information available to your students. So that is another really important piece. You can see our university schedule on Maya, and so for you to know what that schedule is, so you can encourage your child to go to some of these university visits, is going to be really helpful in getting the best and most accurate information on universities and admission processes and what they need and what they're looking for.
So what is a match? College match is a place where a student will be pushed but not shoved, where they will be encouraged to think about others, themselves, and the world, and where the student is going to be happy. So a lot of universities see match as very holistic, right? In that those match factors that we keep talking about are academic match, personal, social match, financial match, and admissions match, right? So we all want to know, how do our students get in, right? What do they need? What does it take to get in? And why and how are they accepted into this college, right? Academic match essentially could potentially mean majors that the university holds, as well as other academic factors that students are looking for. For example, having a minor or a double major, so very academic, the academic piece. I've had students in the past talk about schools and realize that that school does not offer the major or the career aspect that they're interested in focusing on. Personal social match, right? Many different activities, such as students that are interested in sports, for example. Does this university hold certain sports or activities for them? Or if a student is interested in studying abroad, do these universities have these programs, right? Also, to go into that, the size of the school, the size of the classes, right? Student to professor ratios, if your students thrive in a bigger or a small school setting. For a lot of them, KIS might feel small. To me, when I first got here, I thought it was a big high school campus. But then when they go off to university, they might realize, oh, wow, okay, this is a small campus, but it feels big to me. So I think the visiting university campuses is really key to that. Even if they can't go visit a university that they might be interested in, I have encouraged students to go locally to universities here so they get an idea of what a big or a small campus feels like for that physical space. And then financial match, I think, goes along with those costs, the need that the students might have or you as a family might have. Even just considering how much they have to spend on traveling from here to back home to their from their universities, scholarships and things like that. And then admissions, so are they students meeting the admissions criteria, which another way for them to know that is connecting with one of us, right? Talking to the university reps, making sure they have all those criteria to match that admissions. So a lot of that conversation, we're going to go a lot more in depth when we have our meetings with each of you and your students later in the semester, later next semester, to go more in depth of match.
I really like this graphic. This was stolen from a university presentation. And I think what's really great about it is that visual, the how. A lot of students write an application that reads like the how do I get into this university, right? It's the checklist of things. It's, I'm doing all the things that I read online about how do I get in. And not enough of them, or at least not the ones that aren't successful, don't get into the why are they a good match. And a lot of times, if the answer is just because I really want to get in, it's not a very good reason. And the universities can see that. And I think too often we see students or families that think, well, I can figure that part out. I can fake the why. I'll show them that we're a good fit. But it's not genuine enough. And the U.S. universities really are holistic. They're looking for people that are a good fit in a broad sense, in lots of different ways. And if a student can't easily explain, what is their why, it's going to come out in their application. And their application is going to look like the big circle of well, how do I get in? And there's lots of those applications. But what we're working on is we're trying to help them figure out their why. And we're looking for support from you as well in figuring out what is their why. Where are they going to be most successful? How are they going to be successful on that campus? Are they actually thinking about it in a kind of authentic way? And so I really do think this is a good kind of visualization of what we're trying to do between now and their application submissions.
I also just wanted to point out this did come from a university presentation, because they also are very concerned about the good match. We talk about it a lot, you're hoping for it, but it also is very, very important to the universities, and that is how they read applications. Is our school a good match? And is this student a good match? It goes both ways. It's not just a one-way street, it's two ways. So they also find this very, very important, because the number one thing that they're looking for are students who are going to be successful on their campus. They're going to do well in the courses, they're going to do well in the research they do, in the jobs that they do, in the socializing that they do, in the sports that they do, and then later in life, that they would be able to be very successful and represent that university really well. So it isn't just the high school that's wanting a good match. We're saying this because universities are asking for it as well. And that's the lens in which they read the applications.
So I hope by now all of you know what Maya Learning is. So Maya Learning is a really great platform that students and yourself can use to research different campuses. Having that data is really, really important to look at. And that kind of goes back into the admissions factors or the admission match piece of it, because you can see what the average or the general admissions criteria is for each university based on the past 5 years of KIS students who have been accepted to these schools. So we highly recommend utilizing Maya Learning to go into that research process, and even connecting with us to go through some of that information on Maya Learning. So the scatter graphs that you hopefully have seen on Maya Learning, these are specifics to each school. So once you look up a specific school, you can see these graphs that populate. You'll notice that you'll see students who've been accepted, denied, withdraw, the little circles. And so you can kind of see the differences here. This graph on this end, on my right end, looks to be a general good university that has a good rate of acceptances, right? And the one to the next to that graph is a lot more red, right? And so we try to show students the differences of these scatter graphs. But as a family, it's also important to look at that, I think, together, to kind of also join in and see how your students view these graphs and also how you view them, and see if that connects as well. I think these are really important to note. The types of applications, so regular as well as early decisions, and see where those vary as well.
This is also some really factual data that can help families distinguish between the emotional part of going to college and applying to college, which is a very strong feelings of want and desire and excitement and all of those things, and some factual information that might help you make some decisions that will better your child's chances of attending university. And I think that for us as high school counselors, sometimes these graphs are difficult to look at, but it's really important that we're looking at the facts to help you and your families make good decisions.
So good information's good. We want to have the correct information, and we want to use data. We want to use facts. We want to use trusted sources. And we know, as we've been here now for a little while, that there's a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of advice or suggestions, or I heard from this person who heard from this person who heard from this person who applied 12 years ago who did this and they got in. But that's not good information, right? And again, I think what Jennifer's saying, when we really want something and we're tied into it emotionally, there can be this pull to the information that best suits us, right? Oh, this feels good because it means my child has a good chance, or they're already doing this, and if that's the way to get in. And that can be comforting until it doesn't help. And so we really want to, as much as we can, is go direct to sources. Find good ways of getting information. Look at the data, even if it's a little shocking sometimes when we look and we see all the red, and that can feel not very good. But it's also important that we're creating that environment, again, where we're supporting our kids and talking about their positive attributes. And so that when we are looking at some of this data, it's not a reflection on them. It is really just looking at the statistics of a university and kind of understanding them for what they are. So, trusted sources. We're going to talk about ourselves here for a second. Right? We are here to be in your child's corner. Right? We all got multiple degrees. We're licensed counselors. We've worked in this field. We've worked in multiple schools in multiple countries. And we care deeply about your kids. Not where they go, not what schools they get into, but that they get into schools where they're going to be successful, that they leave here excited in spring of their senior year, that they have a plan, that they develop those skills that we want all young adults to have. And that's what we spend our time doing, right? That's all we do. All of our conversations, all of our lessons, all of our presentations, our work is to support them. We're unbiased. I mean, we all have biases, but we're unbiased about where they should go. We're not trying to steer them one way or the other. We're trying to get them to figure out what's the fit for them. We also have direct relationships with the admissions officers. We talk to them. They come visit us. We go to conferences. We were all at a conference with Korea counselors this last weekend, and some of us were at an international conference with reps a couple of months ago, and we've got more of those coming up throughout the year. And so we continue to have those conversations so that we can try to provide that good, factual, unbiased information so that the students are making good decisions. And this little box in the bottom is that we're here to support you as well. I know sometimes there's a worry of, I don't want to ask them, or they're going to think this about me if I go to them, or I don't want to bother them. But that's why we have these jobs. It's so we can have these conversations. And we want you to email us. We want you to set up appointments. You're never bothering us, and your children are certainly never bothering us. And if it's a language barrier, which is sometimes can be uncomfortable, we can have somebody there that can help with that as well. The university. they're even better than us sometimes in getting factual information, because most of our information comes secondhand from our conversations with them. And so when students have very specific questions, or I would say when you hear something that, does that sound right? Oh, I heard that you have to have Calculus BC to get into Purdue. Well, not every high school offers Calc BC, so can that really be true? Contact the admissions, right? Go to their websites or just call them. They have admissions departments that will field these questions and are always happy to have conversations, because they want people to apply and they want their applications to be correct. If there is something that your student doesn't have, they'll be able to tell you, right? And sometimes those very specific to your situation questions, right? Which often is where some of that bad advice comes from, because somebody might say, hey, I heard so-and-so needed this for this school. Well, that sounds like it's about them. It doesn't necessarily sound like it's about you or your child. And so some of those specific questions are great for the university reps. And then again, and we'll show you a list of the universities who have come, in the first month that we were here. They come in the fall and they come in the spring, and these are great times for your kids and you to come talk to some of these reps, depending on the availability. So please, always great resources to go directly to the universities. I didn't do that on purpose. I don't know how that happened. Okay. No, keep going. One more?
Yeah,
there we go.
Yeah.
So this is, again, just pointing out that there is a lot of misinformation out there. And it comes from a lot of different sources and for a lot of different reasons. But a lot of the times, and we hear it all the time, we hear it when we go to conferences with other counselors in Korea and what they're hearing from kids, what they hear from families. And not a week goes by that we don't hear something that we go, wait a minute, where did you hear that from? And we spend a lot of time on that. And again, using trusted sources, us, the universities, going direct to the sources, because there is a lot of bad information, especially when we talk about this idea of a formula, or here's the extracurriculars you should do. We put a list on here of some of the things that we have heard, especially recently. Have you started a nonprofit? Have you published a book? Are you doing a research paper? Right? There's lots of these things that get suggested, get told, gets listed, and sometimes it then becomes this snowball effect where some students are doing them, and so then everybody else feels like they need to do them, and it's this race to keep up. And again, if we get back to the original source of the information, that's not always a great place. The high test scores being, that's what you need to do. That's where you need to spend all of your time. There is no one-size-fits-all formula, right? There can't be. If everybody does all the same things, then everybody has the same application. And then we really are just drawing a name out of a hat. And that's not how admissions works in the US. They're trying to find a fit, and the only way for them to do that is they have to feel like they can get to know your child. And if they can't, if it doesn't feel like it's authentic, then they can't answer the why question, and then they have no reason to admit them, right? The admissions to a lot of the universities that our students want to go to and are capable of getting into are very competitive, right? That's the nature, that's the landscape of U.S. admissions to competitive schools. And so there's lots of good applicants out there. And there's certainly tons of applicants who have followed that formula, right? And they've got that list of things and they've done lots of these things. And then the university rep goes, great, why are they going to be successful here? And they can't answer it because there's no real reason. And again, we just want to keep coming back to this. The student should be doing these things because they're passionate about them, because they enjoy them, because they give them meaning. All the things that we know logically make people successful, make them happy. We all know this, right? And then you're as parents and you're worried about your child, and then you start to hear some suggestions, and it's easy to get wrapped up in that. But just take a breath, And remember, we want to celebrate who they are as an individual, and this process will lead to them getting into a great place.
I just want to ask, this is one place that parents, you also could be very, very helpful, because your kids probably spend a lot of time on social media, and there is a lot of bad information on social media. And kids are less savvy than we as adults are, and they just believe it. So some like attractive kid comes up there and they're wearing a fancy sweatshirt from a fancy school, and they say, I just got into XYZ university, and this is how. Your kids are going to take away from that video, oh, now I know how to do it. And so in conversation with your kids, if you could help us say things like, I wonder where you heard that from. I wonder if that's all true, because you can get on social media. That like attractive person in the fancy sweatshirt, maybe he didn't even apply to that school. You can go on social media and say anything, right? But asking your children those questions, where did that information come from? Do you think that's one individual's story, or do you think that's true across the board? Do you think that if you talk to the university, they would tell you the same thing? So prompting those kinds of questions to help your child think a little bit more critically about what they saw, and maybe helping them see the difference between one person's potentially true story and what may be true information coming from the university that would actually help your child. So I guess we should also add that to the task list for parents. Help your children understand the difference between whatever's on social media and the truth.
I just want to point out the line there towards the bottom where it says, more is not better, which is a line if you've been to any of the presentations or coffees, I've said a lot. More is not better, better is better. But I actually stole this line from another counselor because she put in parentheses, unless the topic is sleep, contributing to class discussions, or sustained commitment. And then more is better, and I really like that. So just wanted to point that out, because they do need more sleep. I know we're not here to talk about their sleep, but I always like to get my plug in every time I see you. So let's look at this is information, we've sent this out. We emailed this to you guys, the NACAC College Admissions Trend Survey, which just looks at what universities, their admissions officers, what they said, because we'd been waiting on this survey because they hadn't updated it since before the pandemic. Again, hopefully you can read that. Again, the slides, we'll share those out if not. But it remains grades at the top, because that's going to be the first thing they're looking at. Are they a good fit academically? And then it really gets into who they are as a person, right? Right below grades is the personal character attributes. Who are they as a person? What are they going to bring to our classrooms and our clubs and the dorms and the fraternities and intramural sports and everything else that they join? Who are they? Are they going to contribute to our school? And then it gets into their writing ability, their worldview, how the teachers talk about them, how the counselors talk about them. And you'll see that things like extracurriculars and SATs, while they're still part of the application, they are a very small part. They are part of telling the story of how they spend their time, how they did on their SATs. These are, again, smaller pieces, and we want to make sure that because time is so important to your students, it's such a valuable resource, that a reminder of where they should spend the majority of their time, and that's in their classroom and who they are as a person. So as we're kind of thinking about this college search, this is something we're going to spend a lot of time with your kids about, but just highlighting a couple of places. If you're looking at, okay, you're saying talk to the counselor, you're saying talk to the schools, but how do we start to figure out what a good match is? How do we start to find research other than the list of schools that we've heard about from our friends and from our older children and what we've seen in the news and on rankings? So Maya Learning is a great place to start a lot of that search. There's a lot of different ways that you can search based on selectivity, area, location. You can see acceptance rate, and you can see all that data that we showed before about the scattergrams of previous applicants. Keep going. Here is the list of college visits. Again, I know it's small. I was trying to figure out how to post as many as possible. This was from the first month of school, and you could see it was incredibly busy. It seemed like every single day we had a new rep coming. And what we continue to tell students, as this will start to pick back up in the spring, is don't just look for the schools that you want to go to. Those are great. And it's certainly, if you know you want to go to Boston University and the Boston University rep is going to be there, go talk to them. But there's lots of other schools that you might not have heard of. And they will talk about not just their school, but what is a liberal arts education? What is a research institution? What is it like to go to a school that's in a city? What is it like to go to a school where it's out in a rural part of the country? There's lots of things. What are we looking for when we're looking at art portfolios, even if that's not the art school you're interested in? So there's still good information that can be gathered, and spring of junior year is the ideal time to be having those conversations, because this is where we want to expand our thinking, expand our knowledge.
One of the things that we talked about previously in the presentation was match and how important match is. And by only going to the schools that you know or that you've heard of, you're missing out on potential fantastic matches. And one of my students in grade 12 this year went to a college visit and fell absolutely in love with the school. And he was like, that's the school I want to go to. He had no idea about the school before that visit, but was filled with such confidence meeting them. And then he went to visit the university after that college visit. So we've been trying to emphasize the importance of match by going to those visits and going to visits of schools you don't necessarily know is going to be a great way to expand your mind of, okay, this is a good match, this could be a good match, and to know why Boston University is a match, or Duke is a match, or whatever school comes and visits us is a match.
And a reminder that the majority of the people that are coming from these universities are the ones that will read your child's application. So again, putting a face to a name, starting to understand who they are, it's really invaluable. College Board has this big future search, so your kids can log into their College Board account. And I like this one a lot. I think it's probably the most, for me, intuitive and interactive. So even though the Maya Learning has the direct attachment to, then you can look at the KIS data, I usually, when I'm working with students who are interested in okay, how do I start the research? I will take them to the big future search. So that's a personal preference of mine. I think it's really kind of fun to play around with. Going directly to the websites. Again, this is where you can get that direct information. They're not going to try to trick you. They're not going to try to hide information. They're going to tell you exactly what they require, what they're expecting. And you're going to start to get a sense of the language that they use, the vernacular. Mm-hmm. What do they list as important? What are they looking for? You can tell a lot by, what the school's policies are.
I want to talk a little bit about now what can you do to really help your children and for them to feel the best throughout this whole process. And a lot of the things I'm going to talk about are so obvious and basic, but we often neglect them. And your children really want to make you feel so proud. That is you are their motivation. And so by giving them permission, reminding them to focus on these things, even though they're so basic, is so important to them, because they're like, yeah, I should and I can focus on these things. So I'm not going to list them all, but I will talk about some of them that I feel are particularly important. This one at the bottom of physical self-care, reducing stresses in your life, learning to say no. We've talked about how more is not always better and can often not be better, and knowing when to say no to additional activities, additional commitments is really important for you to be able to not only manage stress, but hone in on the things that are truly important and the things that your child loves, which is going to help round them out in balancing their life. I want to go on to looking at the emotional self-care. For me, my favorite one is this have a family day. Again, this process for the school and your children and for you can become all-encompassing. You know, that's all they talk about. They talk about it with their friends, and they talk about it with you, then they come to our offices and talk about it, and it becomes part of their whole, or so much of their decision-making becomes encompassed around this college process. By having a family day or family time where you're not talking about college and you're not talking about grades and academics, and of course, I know many of you do this, but it reminds your child that they're important outside of that topic. And so I think that's just a gentle reminder to give time to things outside of the process when it can be so easy to get all encompassed into the process. And I know I can be guilty of that, asking my kids as soon as they come into the office, oh, how are your applications going? Before how are you doing? You know, it can be so easy. So that's just a reminder.
I had a student last year who mentioned that every time they had dinner, they would feel really anxious because their parents would always bring up talking about college applications. So they preferred to not have, you know, they were so anxious to have dinner with their family because of that reason. And so it's kind of going back to, if dinner time is family time, then try not to have that conversation, or have like a planned time to have it on a separate day or time.
Giving them permission. I liked how you introduced that. I'm going to have to steal that next time.
Which one?
The giving them permission.
Oh, yeah.
That's
okay. Again, and so more ways that you can help. I know I've touched on it about encouraging your child. Going through some of the activities on Maya Learning with your child as well will be really helpful. By understanding their interests and their personality will help you kind of navigate the schools that they're going to apply to, because you know their interests, you know what they're looking to do and hoping to do. Again, I mean, it's a repeat, but help reducing their stress through time with them, and just speaking to them. And finally, with just balance. Supporting your child in all areas of their life, as you do. And I know you do this, and you do a fantastic job, because all of our students are so fantastic. I want to encourage you to visit our website. We are constantly and actively updating information on our website. This presentation will be available for you to view on the website, and whenever you would like to arrange a meeting with either of us counselors, you can do that through the links on the website. I know I say it, and we say it in every meeting, talk to us, we're here for you, and I do want to repeat that, because that is why we are here. I think you can use us even more, because that's our purpose.
And some of you are taking advantage of that, and just putting that out there, that some of the parents do email, hey, can we meet? Hey, can we have a quick chat? And we're always saying, yeah, of course. Yeah, let's set that up. Do you want to come in over Zoom? Do you have just some questions I can email you about? So please, utilize us. We're here for you. So as we look forward, there's going to be lots of work that we're doing with your students. But as we look at how we're supporting you and kind of our check-ins through this process, here are kind of the big highlights to be aware of as we get into next semester. Dates will be published once we get back, and we'll send these kind of updates out. And as we've kind of done in the past, we'll send out the dates and the links and for questions and videos and things like that. But our plan is to have a parent coffee with you in February. So again, a nice little check-in, chance to have some conversations. You can have some conversations with other grade 11 parents. We will do our kind of next part of this presentation. So the next, as we kind of get into some of the nitty-gritties of the application and what to expect leading into summer, we'll do that in March. We will do another mock admissions workshop in the springtime. So for those of you who have come, hopefully you've enjoyed those. I know we've really enjoyed putting those on. Throughout the spring, just as you saw at the beginning of this semester, the list of universities, we'll start to see those visits ramp up in March, April, and May as the universities start their spring recruitment. So be on the lookout for those. When they are parent presentations, we'll make sure that we share that information out, but please encourage your children to go to those lunchtime sessions. One of the things that will happen usually sometime after spring break is we will send out links to all of you to schedule one-on-one meetings. And so these are usually hour to hour and a half meetings that we have with you and your child. At that point, they've done quite a bit of research, hopefully, and we will be talking about kind of preliminary college lists, talking about what your expectations, talking about what your match factors are, comparing that to theirs, looking at summer planning and kind of expectations for coming back. So this is very kind of individualized, a chance to kind of talk about all of the things that you and your children are looking forward to and expecting, and kind of giving our take on a lot of that.
Speaking of match factors, you all have an envelope, and inside the envelope are little cards, and on each card is a different match factor for you and your child to talk about. Now, I like to encourage for like a fun family dinner, that parents do a list of what's most important would go at the top of the list, and you just move the cards around until you create that list showing what's the most important to you, all the way down to the least important, or maybe not even factoring into your decisions about schools. And take a picture of that. And then I encourage you to have your child do that, all on their own, not with your input, but all on their own. What is the most important to them, and how do they view that they would be most successful, and what do they think is the most important, all the way from the very most important at the top of the list to the least important, and to take a picture. And then just to talk about it. Talk about where it's the same, talk about where it's different, and how you can come together to work through this process to choose universities that really meet the needs of your child and probably most of your needs and wants as well.
I also think there's a really interesting discussion that happens when we start to figure out, okay, you've got location at the very bottom. Not just why is that not important, but what does that mean? When you think about location, right, sometimes we might think, well, I don't care where in America it's located, right, if we're looking at the US. Well, what about how close is it to a city? How close is it to an airport? What does it mean for how easy it will be to see family? What if you're homesick? What if family wants to come visit or you want to come back? It's going to look a lot different if you're right near LA versus if you're in Urbana-Champaign in southern Illinois. That travel day is going to be vastly different. Understanding weather, understanding how do they do, as you're probably getting a good indication right now, how do they do when the weather gets cold? How does it affect their mood, their energy levels? Because some people are very affected by that. And for some people, not at all. Or for some people, it gets cold and they get really excited. And so that's a good conversation that you can have with them as well in kind of understanding not just location, but what does that actually mean?
That's actually one of the match factors that alumni, in my opinion, talk about the most. That maybe when they were in high school making these decisions, they didn't think it was very important, but once they actually were put into a location where they were supposed to be successful, it was very challenging sometimes, and they just hadn't recognized. Whether it was out in the middle of nowhere, that's one I hear a lot. Out in the middle of nowhere feels really challenging to kids who grow up in such an urban area, or too far away from anything easily accessible. Like you could take a bus for an hour and a half to get to sort of a big city. And when they actually get there to live, they realize how it impacts their well-being. And their well-being should be the very most important, because if they're not feeling well, if they're not feeling positive, they can't be successful in their classes. So really looking and digging into each of those factors is a great activity. And you'll just get to know each other a little bit better as well. Chances are those cards have topics on them that you haven't talked to your children about in a very long time, if at all. And it can be a really wonderful learning experience for them to hear you talk about it from your perspective, and for you really to learn about them.
And that's it. That's our presentation, and we did it in under an hour. I think that's the first time we've actually done it in under an hour since I've been here. So thank you all for your time. We will upload this to YouTube and to our website, and we'll send this out to everybody. And as always, please reach out to us if there's anything we can do for you.
And thank you so much for coming in.